Sean here, and I'm going to make a 5-part series on this, but I urge you to listen to this. I think you need to hear it. When your mom dies first, the change is unbelievable. But let me give you some backstory. My dad was a band geek, right? He was into magic, and they would go out shooting. They had a shooting club at school. People would just march through the school with their rifles shouldered. Nobody even batted an eye. Different time back then. My mom, she was this beautiful young woman, driven, wanted to be a nurse more than anything, ended up being a professor of nursing, wanted to deliver babies. That's all she ever wanted to do. She thought they were the only thing that we could ever prove that God existed were these miracles, the miracle of childbirth. So my dad tries to woo this beautiful young woman. Now, one thing I will say about my dad, he could make my mom laugh. Oh my God, he could make my mom laugh. And I think some women will tell you they would rather have a man with a sense of humor than someone with the body of an Adonis who was stern and lifeless, at least in the long term. I'm not talking about going out and picking up at a bar. My dad would cook, brought her cakes and pies. We found out later it was my grandmother. My grandmother was baking them and giving them to my freaking dad. And Dad was taking them. Oh man, I love my grandmother to death. I miss her every day. They were married. My mom and dad ended up getting married 47 years. During that time, they told my mom she could never get pregnant, so they adopted me, the wild child. 3 years later, along comes my sister, miracle baby. And my dad loved his daughter, just like I love mine, Daddy's little girl. You know, my dad, I was mama's boy. You know, I was always talking to mom. She was really proud of me all the time. My dad just didn't know how to express it. Although, when I would bring a new girl home, after she would leave, high five, from my dad. I know it wasn't because I had a girl that I brought home. He just wanted me to think he was cool, like, I know what you're going through. I had lots of women when I was growing up. No, you didn't, Dad, but it's all good. 2 more stories. My dad came home one time and he had a perm. Nobody expected him to do that. So there's a famous magic photo of him, at least famous in our house and in the magic club, of my dad in his red and white striped magic jacket with a freaking perm. And the other one was, we were at the dinner table, and my dad whenever he would come home and there was a bad child case, he would try his best to hide it, but you could see it coming through. So he was upset with my mom about something stupid. They weren't yelling, but my dad was grumpy, and my mom, and I'll never forget it, we saw it in slow motion. My mom takes a spoon with ice cream in it, because we were having dessert, flicks it. She was pretending like she was going to do it, making a funny face, and it flew across the table and hit my dad in the nose. And it felt like an eternity. And then my dad started laughing, my mom started laughing, we all started laughing, and what could have been a bad memory turned into a fond one. Just some of what I grew up with and how I knew my dad and my mom. My mom, later in life, my dad, we thought he'd be dead by the time he was 50. He had a heart attack. He had an aortic aneurysm right at the time that Lucille Ball died from hers. And it was a very risky procedure back then, and my mom had prepared my sister and I that Dad might die. I stayed over at my cousin's house while my mom was at the hospital. They didn't want me there in case something bad happened. So the long and short of it is, Dad survived it. Then he had a triple bypass, survived that. His heart had rerouted itself. I don't know how they try to explain it, but me, I was wide-eyed, glossy. It basically rerouted itself, and it was functioning. Well, Mom got cancer when she was 72, beat it, or when she was 70, beat it. When she was 72, it started to come back. But this time, the surgeries couldn't help, and so she had to make a decision. Do I live for 15 months with chemo and radiation and just have a terrible quality of life? Or do I live for 8 months, 6 to 8 months, get my affairs in order, get my funeral arranged, figure out what I'm going to be wearing, and this and that? And that's what she did. Now, my dad withdrew during this time because I think he knew she was going to leave, and he was trying to distance himself, not knowing that she needed him, trying to distance himself so it wouldn't be such a shock and devastate him so bad. At least that's what I'm thinking. Dad didn't talk about it that much. So when Mom died, he was in shock. He would have this weird, goopy smile on his face, like he was trying to pretend like everything's okay. Well, my sister, she's a much better caregiver than I was. She would check on Dad a lot. Dad started going to Cracker Barrel. And this is where the shit starts. We didn't think anything of it because Dad and Mom used to go out to Cracker Barrel. One time my dad, when my mom was there, gave a very large tip to a young girl. And my mom was like, Jam, what are you doing? Well, I thought the service was great. And it was 5 of us, or 7 of us, counting the kids. So she had busted her butt. We thought Dad was just being nice. It was going to end up on Instagram or some crap that he was a guy who tipped big. I don't think it was really that big, but it was big enough to make my mom go, what? He would always want us to meet him out there. And it was then that this piece of shit young woman came up and sat on my dad's lap in front of me and started running her fingers through his balding hair. My dad was overweight. He didn't take care of himself once Mom died. He was missing some teeth. This once professional, strong man. And just like a lot of older men, he fell victim to the let me shower attention on the grieving husband. We go to his house. There are letters and bills stacked up to the ceiling. He hadn't been cleaning up. It was bad. And so we stepped in and we put him in assisted living. Now my dad could come and go as he pleased. We started to notice that the inheritance that my mother sat down with me and my sister and planned out what she wanted us to do with it was dwindling a bit. So we asked Dad about it. We weren't really concerned that we just wanted to know where it was going. It's Dad's money. He was still alive. You know what I mean? So my sister asked him one day, Dad, you took out like $4,000 or something like that. No, $9,000. Yeah, it was $9,000. And he said, well, I paid for a semester of this girl. He knew her whole name, where she lived, for a whole semester of her nursing school, because that's what your mom would have wanted. Now, my dad, we could tell, had already started going downhill. We later found out that my father had been giving money to a lot of younger women. This is the saddest thing, man. I get choked up and I get fucking angry when I talk about this. This stupid bitch. If I ever see her in real life, I will slap the living fuck out of her. Trust me, the 5-part series won't have this rage in there. I'll try to do it in a professional manner. And I'm driving by a sign right now that's got Cracker Barrel on it. He bought one girl a new dryer. But here's what fucking pissed me off. We're going through my dad's text messages, and I see this. 2 weeks of my dad. Hey, sweetheart. Good night, sweetheart. I love you. Good night, sweetheart. I love you. Good night. And it went on for 2 weeks. Lots of text messages, not responded. Then 2 weeks later, this fucking bitch responds with, hey, babe, when we go into Best Buy? Because my father had gotten a Best Buy credit card to buy shit for this woman. This disreputable, disgusting piece of trash, human garbage woman who was taking advantage of my senile and grieving father. I had to take a break real quick because I was literally in a blind rage. So we did a little more digging, and my sister, who's much more clever than I am, she decides she's going to get on Dad's computer. Now, this is my father, straight-laced, porn all over his computer, viruses messing it up. My brother-in-law had to go over there on a regular basis and fix it. His doctor talked about prostate this and prostate that, so my dad assumed he was supposed to do something sexual. I mean, fuck. So my dad, I bring the kids over, and on his computer, playing loudly, was porn when my kids walked in. See, my dad, He just had it on in the background like it was Little House on the Prairie for Lauren Armstrong. She gets on his computer. She goes through his Amazon shopping, and it was long and ridiculous and expensive. Buying things for these women they were wearing for their fiancés and their boyfriends. Text messages promising him pictures and everything else. And my father was eating it up. It got so bad at Cracker Barrel, I had to call regional headquarters, which I think is up near Cincinnati. They had a meeting, a fucking meeting, with the manager who was one of the people taking money from my father. Oh, that's not happening anymore. Finally, I just snapped and I said, oh, it's not happening? It's not? Come check his bank account and let's check his receipts. One time I needed gas money. True story. It was during my divorce. Worst period ever. I needed gas money. I go to my dad after Cracker Barrel. He had $1. He had given the other $250 to the fucking server. The one who would sit on his lap. Now finally, my sister tracked down the bitch with the Best Buy. And she laid it out. And you don't want to mess with my niece. My niece would have probably cut her. And if you think I'm kidding, you're out of your mind. Trust me, my niece was having none of that. Then, holy shit, this is even worse. The girl who had her nursing semester paid for was still taking money from my father, even after she no longer worked at Crackhead Barrel. So my father, he's still giving her money. One day, out of the blue, she texts him, Mr. McClure, I just can't keep taking this money. You know, all of a sudden, she grew conscious. I just can't keep taking this money. My fiance tells me I shouldn't do it. It took your fiance, who knew you had been doing it? What lies did you tell him? Heather found out who it was and just send her another email. You send her an email. You're done. What you have done grosses me out. It made us sick, physically ill. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars, probably upwards of 50,000. So much money was gone. So much money was gone that there was no inheritance. See, when you withdraw money early from the account that my father had it before he passed on, there were lots of penalties for taking it out. Basically, half of what you took out would also come out. Let me just say, I would have been set for retirement had my father not done that. And if my mother was still alive, she would have killed him. It got so bad at assisted living that my sister took his debit card, and my dad, I'd never seen him angry. His face bloodshot, because he knew if he didn't have that card, if he didn't have the money, none of these prostitutes were going to talk to him. That's why I say Cracker Barrel is Hooters for old people. Take a deep breath. And I hate to say this, but my father had a stroke, and the best thing that could ever happen to him. He got moved to a nursing home. He was still trying to mac on the women, but he didn't have control of his money anymore. He couldn't get to the bank. He couldn't go buy groceries for this girl at assisted living who had a sugar jar there. Give me some sugar, apparently my dad would say, when he put money in the sugar jar for this unscrupulous bitch. These people are not monitored. There is no code of ethics. There's nothing to stop them from doing it. They don't get briefed on this. Don't take any money from senior citizens. Don't do it. I mean, it got so bad at Crackhead Barrel that one of them actually came up, well, when am I going to get some money? My dad said, that's it, I'm done. I was just trying to help people out. He was there the next day. To show off for one of these women at Crackhead Barrel, he asked her, how many kids you think are in here right now? And she told him. So he went out and he bought a toy for every single one of those children. As a matter of fact, that was the night I went there, and I said, Dad, do you have any gas money? And he had a single dollar. And I coasted into my house. When your mom dies first, hell is real. Coping, everything. It just flips them into somebody you don't recognize. And it tore me and my sister apart for a long time. A long time. Because of my father and his behavior. It just stressed us the hell out. A guy, an administrative law judge, stand-up guy, professional guy, helped people for real in life. Loved my mother. Never had an issue. Never even viewed porn. She dies. He's a porn addict. Gets taken advantage of. Ridiculous sums of money with Crackhead Barrel. And they still never did anything about it. And this bitch I told you about, hey hun, when we're going to Best Buy, apparently she did it to another old man. I don't understand how you can get there. I get that you need money. And how you could do the mental gymnastics to say, you know what, I'll just take this money. They're offering it to me. It's a gift. I'll just take it. But when you tell my dad you love him once, and you respond, good night, sweetheart, and he spends his entire life, whatever the rest of it was until he went to assisted living, texting you back, good night, baby, good night, sweetheart, I love you, good night, and you respond with, hey, babe, when we going to Best Buy? My dad bought it, and she just left him at Best Buy. Oh, thanks, sweetie. Packed it in her car, went home, and on Facebook posted it. Just had somebody buy me all this stuff, bragging about it. This is what can happen if your mother dies first. And I'm going to go into depth on this, but you have to prepare. You have to prepare yourself for the change. Some people, it's just fine. Some people, they're just fine. But when you live in a different city than your father, and this happens, it's really difficult. And it can kill you emotionally. And unfortunately, it killed my sister and I emotionally. And my last memories of this man are not good ones. Not at all. He had a stroke. He had one after that, but he had a stroke, and he's in the ER, basically unresponsive, until a young nurse comes in, and he sits up, the hair he has left just all messed up, teeth, terrible shape, sits up, hey, well, what's your name? That's how far my father had fallen. So when your mom dies first, be vigilant. Because there are vultures out there that have no morals, no ethics, no code of conduct, no shame. And they will try to take advantage of your father. That's my video. I hope it helps some of you. I think it helped me to get some of the leftover rage out. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one.